Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos. This is the Scrappy Star Patch block. It finishes at 12 inches. Here's the diagram. We have 5 4 patches and 4 triangle and square units. The 4 patches are finished at 4 inches, so if you have leftovers or scraps of 2.5 inch strips or 2.5 inch squares, this is a perfect use of those. Here are 4 blocks set block to block, and you see it makes the illusion of a circle when you put them together. And here is a larger quilt, and it really looks like circles when you look at it from a distance. And I have the AccuQuilt dies listed here that you can use for 2 patches. Patch A is a 2-inch finished square. You cut 2.5 inch squares. We need 10 assorted of the dark fabrics and 10 assorted of the light background fabrics. This is your chance to use up scraps of light and dark backgrounds, and your low volume prints and anything goes pretty much in this quilt if you just have a good contrast between your lights and your darks. For strip piecing, you can also strip piece, and I'll demonstrate a little bit of that in a minute, instead of cutting the patches. For the B and B reversed patches, we're going to use the Rex ruler as part of the Tri-Rex tool, and we'll cut one at 4.5 inches by 15 inches, fold it in half, and we'll cut 4 sets. For patch C, we'll use the triangle part of the ruler set. We cut 1 strip at 4.5 times 15 inches and cut 4 patches. So the first thing we'll do is make all of our 4 patch units, then we'll make all of our triangle and square units. At the bottom, I have a Scrappy 60-inch by 84-inch sample quilt. For the 4 patch units, you'll need to make 175 of them. The light fabric and the dark fabric each, you'll need about 22 strips, 2.5 inches times the width of fabric. That's just a guideline to show you. If you are using strips, you can choose 22 strips of light or 22 strips of dark. And the triangle and square units, you need 140 of those. So the light fabric, you'll need a total of 18 strips at 4.5 by 34 inches. Each of those strips will get you 2 blocks. And the same thing you'll need for the dark fabric. So there's several ways you can make this quilt. Here are the fabrics, and for the dark squares, patch A, I just dug into my scrap bin, my 2.5 inch scrap bin, and pulled out 10 of them, and then I had to cut a few of these, but this is a mixture of the light backgrounds. If you don't want to do patches, you can do strip piecing, and if you're not familiar with strip piecing, you take a strip, and in this case it's a 2.5 inch strip. These are just leftovers of strips I used for other things. And I have a dark and a light fabric. You sew them together long ways and press the seams open. Then what you'll do is take your ruler, and first we'll trim off the edge. And you'll trim segments at 2.5 inches. And I like to start at the 5 inch mark and slide it this way and trim another 2.5. And then you will mix these up. So you'll take this from this strip and another from another strip, turn them around like this, sew them together like this, and press the seams open. And that's one 4 patch unit. Here are the fabrics I'm going to use for the triangle and square units. And I'll have a demonstration of how to cut and piece these for both the Tri-Rex tool and the AccuQuilt tool. What I've done in this quilt is all of the 4 patches are Scrappy, but the Tri-Rex units are all the same. You can have different fabrics in the background if you like, but I've had the triangle parts are all the same. So the first thing we're going to do is make our 4 patch units, and we need 5 of them. You can do your strip piecing and cut those up. You can do your patches. And what I do with the patches, I'll go through and just stitch a light to a dark and chain piece them. So you'll have 10 of these. Press the seams and then sew them together like this. So you'll have 5 4-patch units. Stay tuned for a tutorial of how to cut and piece the triangle and square units using the Tri-Rec tool and using the AccuQuilt. I'm using the Tri-Rec tool to do the triangles and square, or the Tri-Rec units. We want a 3-inch finished Tri-Rec unit. So we cut our strips 3.5 inches for the triangles and the rectangles. And we're going to use the 3.5 inch mark on the ruler. Now I need to have 8 of these units, so I need 8 triangles. That's the first one, and I find it easier to turn the fabric this way. Now I have my 8 triangles. Next we're going to cut the rectangle part of the triangle and square. And I have 2 pieces of fabric here, wrong sides together, and we're going to be cutting 1 set at a time every time we make this cut. The first one I've already done. You lay it down here on the 3.5 inch mark, and then you cut it. On the edge of this, there's this little bitty nub right here you need to cut off. It looks insignificant, but it really helps you in the placement of your pieces. So cut that off. And now we have our first set, and this gets you your pieces like this. And then your triangle is sewn this way. On this one I'm going to turn this way as well. So I have my first set cut. Now I need 7 more sets. To piece the Tri-Rec unit, you turn the piece over like this, and that little notch you cut out, you're going to line up with this edge of the triangle. So you have your notch lining up that edge, and then you have your side lining up with this edge. And we're going to start our stitching here and stitch a 1/4 inch all the way down. When you stitch it, your stitching should start right at this point here, and this should be a 1/4 inch here. So we've stitched all the way down to the bottom. And then when we open it up and press the seam open, it will look like this. This nub up here you have to cut off because it just gets in the way. And down here, if you'll notice down here, there's also a nub here that you can cut off. And this little angle for the rectangle fabric is sort of cut off a little bit. And that's just fine. It'll work out just fine. Now we take our other side, which is this, and we do basically the same thing. We're going to match down here, match where you cut off the little blunt edge right here along this line, and then match the long side here. And we'll start stitching here. If you can see where this V is, right at that point should be your 1/4 inch, and you start there and stitch a 1/4 inch all the way down, and you should come off right here at this where this blunt edge was cut off. Here are 2 of them finished. This is what it looks like before the nubs are cut off. So you have a nub down here, and then the last one up here. So you trim those off, and here's what it looks like trimmed off. These little curved here, sort of curved edges here, are just fine. It doesn't matter. It'll be taken up in the seam allowance. It's just how it comes out. And then those are finished. So go ahead and make all 8 of those. This demo, I'm going to show you how to cut and piece the triangle and square unit using the AccuQuilt. Here are the pieces you use. I'm using a die. There's one die for the triangle and one die for the rectangle parts. AccuQuilt calls this unit a triangle and square. This is the triangle and these are the sides that make the square. And you have two pieces. You have mirror images for your sides and your triangle is just a triangle. These dies are from the cube. These finish at 3.5 inches. But there's a set for every cube, and there are also sets you can buy that have all these dies on one strip. And I think they finish at either 3 inches or 4 inches. There's a link in the description of the video to show you all your dies you can make the triangle and square with AccuQuilt. My dies, I always outline my blades. I add 1/4 inch to each side and then I measure it. So here I've measured and it's 4 inches. So this tells me I need to cut my fabric at 4 inches. And if I only want one, I'll have a 4-inch square that I put on here. If I want to cut multiple ones, I'll cut a 4-inch strip. I've also figured out how many pieces I get per strip. And this one, I can get 17 of these shapes per strip. And I wrote that on there. And I did the same thing to the side parts. These will cut 2 at a time, but they are not mirror images of each other. And we'll get into that in just a second. And here I've measured again. This is 3.25 and this is 4 inches. And I get 10 of these. That means 10 of this per shape, which means 2 per cut. So to cut this, the rectangle part, we need to have mirror images. If I put these on here, this is wrong side up. I had to flip it to get that shape. And this is right side up. So what you'll have to do is take your fabric, fold it either wrong sides together or right sides together. I just have these wrong sides together. And then put your fabric over the 2 dies. And this will give you 2 sets. It will give you 2 left sides and 2 right sides. And they'll be the same. So that's what you have to do with these. The triangle, it doesn't matter how you put it on the die because it's symmetrical and it won't matter left or right. Here's one that I've cut. And it's like this. And it came out of this. So I wanted to show you how I cut these. I'll lay this on here first. And I'll cut one. Then take this off. And usually I cut this part off here because I don't want it to get in the way. Now I have my angle here so I can flip it this way. And then you get better use of your fabric. So make your cut here and then cut off these little pieces and then flip it and just continue cutting as many as you need. So for one unit, you need 1 triangle and 1 pair of mirror image sides. Now let's see how we're going to piece these together. If I'm piecing a lot of these units, I will chain piece one side first. So if I'm doing 8, 10, whatever, I'll do all of this side first, press them, and then add the last side next. The dies have cut off all the points here. This gives you a way to match up for your piecing. So we'll take this first one and flip it over. I'm matching this cut here and this edge. I usually start with this one because it matches better. This is at the tip of the triangle. So let's match this here and then match however it ends up here. Then I'll start stitching at 1/4 inch and then finish stitching 1/4 inch down here. Now I wanted to zoom way in so you can see. This is the bottom part, the part that I matched first, and you can see the stitching comes out almost right on that point. And up here, it doesn't really match any point here, so just be sure you have 1/4 inch when you start stitching. Now I'll press it open. This is pressed open. This is the bottom part of the triangle, and you see this white part or the side part comes out just a little bit, but that's okay. And then the top part comes out. They meet together at the edge. And that's what you want. Now we're going to flip this over. This is how the piece goes. So we'll flip this over. Now you're going to match the top part of the triangle with this part right here. So match that there. Match the straight edge here and the edges here. Stitch up here, start here with your 1/4 of an inch. Going back one step, each time you match your side pieces to your triangle, do the matching at the tip of the triangle. Before we had the tip facing this way and we started our matching down here. Now we have our tip facing this way and we started our matching up here. And here's what it looks like. This is even across the top here, and that point is right at your 1/4 of an inch. And then down here, you're off a little bit with your 1/4 of an inch, but that's okay because we did the same thing over here. So now we will press the seams open. And here is your finished triangle and square unit. You see from the tip of this point to the edge is about a 1/4 of an inch. And it's straight across the edge, nothing to cut off here. And then down here, you'll see these little bitty pieces kind of come out a little bit. I would trim those off because they might get in the way when you're stitching. There's a little bit peeking over here too. And you'll see that this white part or the side part comes out. It looks like maybe 1/8 of an inch comes out on the side. But don't worry about that. It will be taken up in the seam allowance when you sew this unit to another piece. And that's how you stitch the triangle and square with the AccuQuilt. The 4 patches are done and the triangle and square units are done. So we just put the block together. And the 4 patches, the dark fabric has to go in the corner. And there's your block. You sew the 3 units in the top to a row, then another row and another row. Press your seams open, then sew the rows together. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.